When you think about really tense borders, you usually picture, established armies, maybe missiles, diplomacy.
Yeah.
But the India-Pakistan border, it's becoming something else. It's almost like a live lab for next-gen defense tech.
It really is. Forget just the headlines. Underneath, there's this massive tech shift happening.
Yeah.
Quietly, but very, very quickly.
So today on the deep dive, we're going right there into that surprising dynamic. We're looking at how Indian defense startups are just booming and how they're changing air defense.
Yeah, our mission, if you like, is to unpack how these newer agile companies are basically rewriting the rulebook.
And why Pakistan seems to be struggling to keep pace. Plus, what does it all mean for warfare, down the line?
Exactly. And we've been digging into quite a few sources, analyses of India's defense sector, reports on specific incidents on the border,
Right.
Trying to get the full picture.
Okay, so let's jump in. The scale of change in India's defense world is, well, it's pretty stark, isn't it? Moving away from mostly state-run giants to, over 350 startups now.
It's a huge shift.
Yeah.
For decades, it was primarily the big government organizations. Now you've got this influx of private innovation, startup agility. It's a different ballgame.
And some of the stories behind these startups are wild. Like, IdeaForge started in a college dorm, seriously.
Yeah.
And now their drones are flying patrols at 18,000 feet in the Himalayas, spotting things satellites might miss. That's quite the leap.
It absolutely is. From a student project to a key piece of national security hardware. It really shows how India's approach to innovation is changing. It's not just government labs anymore.
Definitely. And Tonbo imaging, too. Thermal cameras, right? Originally for self-driving cars.
That's right. Designed for autonomous vehicles. Now, soldiers in Kashmir are using that same tech to see through smoke, darkness.
Wow. That's a game changer for situational awareness on the ground.
Absolutely. It shows how quickly these companies can pivot, find new uses for their tech.
And the government's clearly pushing this, right? This self-reliant India thing, Atmanirbhar Bharat, it feels like it's actually, making things happen.
Oh, for sure. It sets the vision, the strategy. But then you have things like iDEX innovations for defense excellence. That's the practical link.
How so?
It funnels money, yes, but more importantly, it gives contracts to startups solving actual military problems. It connects the need directly with the innovators.
And you can see the results, like Project Akashtir. That's a $200 million program just to automate air defense command centers.
Yeah, the idea is to slash reaction times from minutes down to seconds.
Think about that advantage. Seconds versus minutes when something's incoming. That speed is crucial.
It is, and the ambition level is just high. Then there's Project Kusha, even bigger.
Right? DRDO's plan for a mobile layered missile shield, like Israel's Iron Dome, people say.
Sort of, yeah, but the aim is indigenous, maybe cheaper, and definitely smarter AI-driven layered defense. They're targeting 2028 for a debut.
That seems past.
It is ambitious. But that's where the startup agility comes in, isn't it?
Huh.
Compared to the old bureaucracies.
Yeah, one source made a great point about drone swarms from Pakistan. Startups can push software updates overnight to counter new tactics.
You just can't do that with older legacy systems.
Yeah.
That software speed is becoming as vital as the hardware itself.
That adaptability is key. Which brings us to the India-Pakistan dynamic. It really feels like a tech Cold War playing out there.
It does. The difference in air defense capability seems quite significant now.
India's got this mix, right? A bit of everything. Russian S-400s, Israeli Spy-Deer systems, and now all this homegrown stuff. One source called it a Frankenstein's monster of tech.
Yeah, a diverse arsenal. Pakistan, on the other hand, often seems reliant on, older systems, sometimes described as hand-me-downs. They struggle against the newer threats.
And those May 2025 clashes we looked at, they really highlight this, don't they?
Absolutely. A real-world test case. India reportedly intercepting 327 drones using AI algorithms from startups like Axiscades. That's a huge number.
And Pakistan using those Turkish Bayraktar TB2s, but reports suggest India cracked their encryption.
Yeah, that's a critical point. It's not just about the drones themselves, but the electronic warfare aspect, jamming, decryption. India seems to have an edge there, too.
And we can't forget the BrahMos missile in this whole equation.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Supersonic Mach 3. And a 600-kilometer range? That's a serious capability.
Operation Sindoor, mentioned in the sources, striking targets deep inside Pakistan with potentially less than, 8 minutes warning for Islamabad?
It fundamentally changes the strategic balance, and reportedly Pakistan's older HQ-9 systems just couldn't cope effectively during that operation.
So the bottom line seems pretty clear. India's not just spending more, like $84 billion versus $8 billion. They're innovating faster in critical areas.
They're out-innovating them. And that May 2025 crisis really drove this home. It wasn't about tanks or jets so much.
It was a drone war. That's what the sources kept emphasizing.
Precisely. A shift in how these conflicts might play out. And India's response. It really showcased these startups acting like you said, a startup SWAT team.
Some amazing examples. New space research out of Bengaluru, jamming 112 drones with microwave guns.
Yeah, not shooting them down, jamming them electronically. A different tactic.
And SSS Defense, using AI to predict swarm patterns, protecting bases in Punjab.
Using algorithms to anticipate the enemy's moves. Very sophisticated.
But Pakistan had a counter, right, flooding the zone with cheap decoys like $5,000 each.
That seemed to be the strategy, yeah.
Yeah.
Try to overwhelm the defenses, make India waste expensive missiles on cheap decoys.
And it worked, initially.
To an extent, it seems.
Yeah.
But then the Indian startups adapted again, tweaked the radar software to ignore the fakes.
That constant back and forth, innovation, counter-innovation.
Exactly. But the crisis also showed India's vulnerabilities. That S-400 battery in Jammu reportedly taken out, even temporarily, by kamikaze drones.
Yeah, that's a bit sobering. A top-tier system vulnerable to cheap swarm attacks.
It really underlines that even the most advanced hardware needs that startup-like agility. You need layers, and you need to adapt fast.
Which loops back perfectly to Project Kusha, that mobile AI shield relocating every 15 minutes, making it much harder to hit.
Right. The May 2025 events probably put that project on the fast track, hence the 2028 target.
This need for agility, for advanced tech, it's also pulling the U.S. and India closer, isn't it?
It seems so. This idea of Silicon Valley meets Hyderabad. You have initiatives like India-USX, backed by the Pentagon.
The goal being?
Well, partly it's about building a tech partnership to counterbalance China's influence, leveraging strengths from both sides.
And we're seeing concrete deals now. General Atomics and Farhat Forge building Sea Guardian drones in Pune.
That's a big one. And Skydio, the U.S. drone firm, working with Forge on those Himalayan patrol drones.
But there's a snag, right? U.S. export controls on the really high-end chips, the ones you need for advanced AI, big drone swarms.
That's definitely a hurdle. Those advanced AI processors are tightly controlled. But you're already seeing Indian companies getting creative.
Like MeHup, finding ways to run their AI on older chips.
Exactly. Redesigning algorithms to work with less powerful, more available hardware. It might be slower, perhaps, but it's a workaround. Shows the resourcefulness.
It really does. But it can't be easy being one of these startups. Funding must be a constant challenge.
Oh, absolutely. It's not like your typical tech startup aiming for quick VC returns. Defense sales cycles are long.
Rahul Chaudhary from Tonbo Imaging mentioned, 5 years sometimes? For a deal, VCs might not have that patience.
Exactly. So they have to find other ways to survive.
Like pre-selling prototypes through iDEX, getting those initial orders guaranteed.
That's crucial. It provides early cash flow, validation, and also looking outwards, early exporting.
Selling counter-drone tech, maybe, to the Middle East while waiting for bigger domestic contracts.
Precisely. Generate revenue, prove the tech in other markets. It's a smart strategy.
But even with funding, there's the bureaucracy. That example of Big Bang Boom solutions. Waiting 11 months for a drone battery certification. Needing 17 signatures.
Yeah, that highlights the friction points.
Yeah.
The government wants to help, clearly.
Yeah.
But streamlining those processes is going to be vital if these startups are going to scale effectively.
So looking ahead, while Pakistan is the immediate focus of much of this tech development, the bigger picture, the longer-term challenge, that's China, right?
Unquestionably. India's defense planners are very much focused on China's capabilities. And these startups are part of that long-term strategy.
Developing some pretty futuristic stuff, too, like quantum radar at IS Bangalore to detect stealth fighters like the J-20.
Potentially, yes. That would be a major leap if they can pull it off.
And hypersonic missile defense. DRDO working with Agnikul Cosmos, a space startup, using rocket tech to intercept threats at Mach 10.
I mean, that's pushing the absolute boundaries of defense tech, leveraging startup innovation for really high-end challenges.
And beyond defending India, there's this ambition to become a major arms exporter, especially to the global south, aiming for $5 billion in exports.
That's the goal. It would certainly shift dynamics in the global arms trade if they achieve it.
We see hints of it. That big BrahMos deal with Vietnam, $2 billion, though apparently facing some red tape.
Yeah, execution can be slow, but also things like trials of Indian counter-drone systems in Saudi Arabia. There's definite interest out there.
So wrapping this up, why should you, our listener, really care about this specific story on the India-Pakistan border?
Well, because it reflects these huge global shifts. The U.S.-China tech competition, Russia's changing role as an arms supplier, the drone revolution happening everywhere. It's all playing out here.
Right. And a few key takeaways for you. First, small beats big sometimes. Startups really can innovate faster than the old giants.
Second, AI is the new nuke. Smart algorithms, fast data processing, that's increasingly where the decisive edge lies in modern conflict.
And finally, watch India. If they get this right, manage the bureaucracy, harness the innovation, succeed in exports, they could become a really significant force in the global defense market.
And maybe a final thought for you to chew on. If this kind of startup agility, this decentralized innovation, can be so impactful in something as complex and high stakes as national defense, where else could we apply it? How could that model tackle other major global challenges we're all facing? Someone to think about.